Deputy Secretary General at the APT. It's a pleasure to be hosting this webinar today with such a high quality of partners and participants. We are really truly honored to welcome participants from all over the world, from the Maldives, South Africa, Honduras, and Finland. This webinar is also available on streaming on Facebook, and there is interpretation into English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So today we wanted to share the lessons learned from our prevention journey with our partners from Brazil, Madagascar, and Thailand in implementing detention safeguards in the first hours of detention. We really hope that this webinar will contribute to highlight good practices and also raise awareness about how detention safeguards, when implemented, contribute to decreasing the risk of torture and ill treatment. We will also discuss lessons learned and challenges. So before getting into the practical discussions, I wanted to give you some background to the webinar and to our project. We have 2 hours of discussion today in front of us. There will be plenty of speakers. So I also recommend you put the speaker view, so then you have directly the person who is speaking. So there is evidence that the first moment of detention between apprehension by the police and presentation before a judge are when detainees are at the highest risk of being tortured and ill-treated. This was confirmed by the 2016 independent academic study commissioned by the APT does torture prevention work. And this research also demonstrated that torture and ill-treatment can be reduced effectively through a combination of preventive measures when they actually address the most risky situations in detention. These measures include implementing detention safeguards during police custody, and this is what we're going to discuss today. And they also include enhancing detention monitoring by oversight bodies, ending unofficial and incommunicado detention, and moving away from reliance on confessions. So amongst the most effective detention safeguards to reduce the risk of torture and ill treatment, there are the prompt access to a lawyer.
Il faut un accès au conseil, il faut que les proches soient notifiés de la détention, il faut un accès à un médecin et il faut que les détenus soient informés au sujet de leurs droits. Il est également aussi important de comparer devant un juge pour réduire les cas de mauvais traitement. Donc les garanties à la détention peuvent réduire ce risque, non seulement du fait qu'ils existent dans le droit, mais aussi grâce à leur mise en œuvre en pratique. Donc, je vais vous mettre en exergue les différents écarts entre le droit et la pratique qui ouvrent la voie à de mauvais traitements. Donc, c'est très important d'assurer la mise en œuvre et un suivi pour prévenir la torture et les mauvais traitements. En 2018, nous avons lancé un projet de 3 ans dans 3 pays qui vont nous prendre la parole aujourd'hui, le Brésil, le Madagascar et Thaïlande, financé par le canton de Genève. D'ailleurs, le représentant du canton de Genève sera parmi nous aujourd'hui.
Treatment through the implementation of detention safeguards. You may actually ask yourself why these 3 countries. We really wanted to have an overview of different contexts and different challenges, and we also had been working with fantastic partners for the past years. So with these partners, we were really able also to explore the steps forwards in the implementation of detention safeguards. The webinar is divided into 2 parts. The first one is really a discussion between our partners and our APT colleagues who have been leading on the project. And the second part is when you participants, you can also contribute through questions and answers you can ask in the question and answer box. Please introduce yourself in writing when you do so. We will also hear from additional partners during these Q&A sessions. If we don't manage to get all the questions, we will also follow up with you directly after. Let's start. In Brazil, the APT has been focusing its work on the implementation of custody hearings in partnership with the National Council of Justice of Brazil. So we will hear directly from the judge Mario Guerreiro about the implementation nationwide, and the judge will be interviewed by Silvia Diaz, our national representative in Brazil and senior legal advisor. Judge, thank you so much for joining us today. Silvia, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Audrey. Good morning to all. Bom dia a todas e todos. First of all, just a quick practical comment that I will conduct this session of the webinar in Portuguese. So please use the language channels at the bottom of the screen to hear the translation in either French, Spanish, or English. Então, como eu dizia, eu vou moderar essa sessão em português. Meu nome é Silvia Dias, eu sou assessora jurídica sênior e representante da PT no Brasil e estou conectada do Rio de Janeiro, Brasil. Nessa primeira sessão do nosso webinar, eu vou conversar sobre o Instituto das Audiências de Custódia com o Dr. Mário Guerreiro, juiz de direito e conselheiro do Conselho Nacional de Justiça. Em 2015, o Brasil deu um passo crucial para salvaguardar os direitos das pessoas sob a custódia da polícia, com a implementação das chamadas audiências de custódia. Este instituto ele determina que toda pessoa presa deve ser levada à presença de uma autoridade judicial nas primeiras 24 horas do ato da prisão. Trata-se de uma salvaguarda que é fundamental, que permite que o magistrado tenha um contato direto com a pessoa que foi presa num curto espaço de tempo após o ato da prisão e verifique e indague sobre as circunstâncias da prisão. E verifique também se as garantias constitucionais do devido processo legal foram observadas. Como parte desse projeto, e como a Audrey mencionou, a APT colaborou nos últimos 3 anos com o Conselho Nacional de Justiça e também com tribunais de justiça estaduais e defensorias públicas, visando justamente potencializar o impacto das audiências de custódia, aprimorar a qualificação técnica dos magistrados para identificar sinais, indícios de violência institucional e também promover boas práticas para criar as condições adequadas que tornem possível um relato por parte da pessoa custodiada de prática de tortura ou maltrato que tenha sofrido, num ambiente seguro, livre de ameaças e intimidações. Então, dessa forma, e já estendendo aqui os meus cumprimentos e agradecimentos ao Dr. Mário Guerreiro por aceitar o nosso convite para participar desse diálogo conosco, eu coloco aqui a primeira pergunta ao Dr. Mário. Dr. Mário, como as audiências de custódia, como elas contribuem para coibir a prisão ilegal, para reduzir a aplicação da prisão preventiva e também para prevenir e combater a tortura e a violência policial no país? Dr. Mário, você tem a palavra.
Obrigado, Silvia. Senhoras e senhores, bom dia. Fico feliz em poder participar desse evento tão importante, né?
In this important event and discuss this topic in such a qualified forum. Here in Brazil, I think I actually must introduce myself first. My name is Mário Guerreiro. I am a judge, counselor of the National Council of Justice, and supervisor of the Brazilian penitentiary system. We have been working here in the improvement of the conditions of penitentiaries for a while, both when the entry of the inmate, of the detainee, and also during their stay in the penitentiary and after they leave the penitentiary. Today we're talking about their entry, which involves the custody hearing and the fight against torture specifically. It is important to highlight that in 2015, the Brazilian Supreme Court declared that our penitentiary system lived in an unconstitutional moment. It was a reiterated violation of the fundamental rights of the Brazilian people. So that led to a series of initiatives from the executive and from the judiciary, and with the objective of improving the conditions of the Brazilian penitentiaries. The custody hearing was a very important initiative that appeared in the core of that movement of humanization of sentences. We see it here with 2 main functions. The first one of them is at the moment of the arrest, the in flagrante delicto, when we try to reduce the most the pretrial arrests, which many times are unnecessary. In 2015, when the custody hearings
garde à vue et qu'on a eu les premières études, les premiers résultats au Brésil, nous avons une fédération. Nous sommes au Brésil, nous avons des
Nous
États.
sommes une
Quand on a
fédération ici au
commencé à
Brésil, je
voir
dois
les
préciser.
premiers chiffres
Donc, il y
des
a
divers
différents
États
États.
qui ont
Et
commencé à
lorsque
adopter ce système des audiences de garde à vue,
des chiffres ont
nous
été
avons eu
publiés par
d'excellentes
les États pour la
surprises
première fois après
avec des indices de
la
40 à
création de
50
ces
de
audiences de garde à vue.
réduction
Il y a eu des
dans
surprises. Il
les
y a eu une
prisons
réduction de
préventives dans
40%
ces États
des arrestations
qui avaient
préventives
adopté ces
au
mesures,
sein
ce
des
qui a
États
été
qui ont
extrêmement
commencé
intéressant parce
à
que le système de détention au
euh,
Brésil était en train de passer par une
utiliser le
courbe
système. C'est
ascendante
intéressant car
d'augmentation de
il
la
y a une
population
augmentation
carcérale. Toutes les années,
au
on avait une
Brésil chaque année
augmentation énorme
de la
et
population
avec ces
pénitentiaire
audiences de
qui va
garde
en
à vue, nous
s'accélérant. Et
sommes
grâce à ces
parvenus à
audiences de garde à
réduire
vue,
un
nous
peu
avons
cette entrée.
réussi
Nous
à
avons donc
réduire
réduit la
cette
courbe de
augmentation.
croissance
Nous
de
avons
la
essayé
population
d'incliner
carcérale au
la
Brésil.
courbe
Nous sommes parvenus à stabiliser ces chiffres,
croissante
ce qui nous a permis
de
de
la
mieux évaluer
population
maintenant
de
avec
détenus au
qualité
Brésil. Donc,
cette
depuis
population qui
2015,
se trouve
nous
emprisonnée
travaillons
encore.
avec cette
Une
population
seconde fonction de cette agence de
de
garde à
personnes
vue
incarcérées de manière
est
plus
le combat
judicieuse. Donc,
à la
ensuite,
torture.
il y a
Je pense que c'est le
un
principal
deuxième
intérêt de
aspect de
notre
notre
débat
travail, c'est le combat
aujourd'hui
contre
et
la
j'essaierai
torture. Je crois
de
que
vous
c'est le
donner quelques
principal
données
sujet
sur
de
ce
notre
thème.
débat d'aujourd'hui. Donc, je vais essayer de vous donner
La
des données
APT elle-même
concernant
a
ce
publié
sujet en particulier. L'APT
une
a
étude
publié une
sur la prévention de la
étude
torture
sur la prévention de
pour
la
voir comment
torture intitulée
assurer
Est-ce que les
le,
mesures
les mesures de
fonctionnent? Donc,
processus légal et
cela
comment elles
montre
sont
aussi les
plus
garanties
efficaces dans les premières
d'un
heures
procès
de la
équitable
détention.
que nous avons
Et
mis en
on a
œuvre sont
vérifié
efficaces dans le
cela au
combat contre la
Brésil.
torture.
En
Et
2018,
d'ailleurs, nous avons pu
nous avons eu une
vérifier
étude
cela
de
au
l'Institut
Brésil.
de
En
défense du droit
2015, nous avons
avec
une
la
étude sur
coopération du
les droits de
système
la
international de
défense
justice. Nous
et le
avons
Conseil,
analysé
grâce au
2700
Conseil
cas
national de
en
la
9
justice, qui ont
États sur le territoire
analysé
brésilien.
euh,
Et on a
plusieurs centaines de
demandé
cas
aux
au
gens
Brésil.
sur la violence policière. 25% ont
On a
répondu
posé des questions au sujet de la
affirmativement
violence
et ont
policière.
pointé le doigt à la
25%
police
ont
militaire comme
répondu de
étant
manière
responsable
affirmative. On
des
dit
cas
que la police
d'agression à
militaire est celle qui est
75%,
responsable des attaques dans 75% des
75%
cas,
des
ce qui
cas.
montre que la
Et
police
c'est la
militaire
police
est
militaire qui fait la police au
la
Brésil
police militaire, c'est la police qui est dans la
dans
rue au
la vie
Brésil
quotidienne
et eux
et
s'occupent de
qui
la sécurité du
est
public au
chargée
quotidien,
de travailler sur la sécurité,
contrairement à la police
différemment de la
judiciaire
police
qui
judiciaire qui
s'occupe
est
des
chargée
enquêtes.
justement des recherches.
Donc,
Nous
nous
avons
avons
fait une recherche avec
également
l'Institut Connect de droits humains qui, en
reçu une
2016, qui a
étude de
suivi
Connectus, droits
393
de l'homme,
audiences
sur
où
les droits de
on a
l'homme, qui
rapporté
a publié en
363 cas dans 27 autres occasions.
une
Les
étude
gens qui étaient en garde à vue présentaient des
qui
lésions
montre que les cas
visibles
de
dont ils ne
torture
parlaient pas
euh,
au moment de
ont été
l'audience
signalés dans
préliminaire. De tous
363
ces
cas.
cas
Ensuite, il y a eu des cas de
rapportés,
blessures qui n'ont pas été
26%
euh,
n'ont pas
mais
été
sans
acheminés pour un examen,
cas de
ce
torture
qui montre un changement
signalés. Donc,
de culture
75% des
pour
cas n'ont pas
examiner
été
ces cas quand ils se
enquêtés, n'ont pas
présentent
fait
maintenant.
l'objet d'enquête. Donc, nous devons
La
enquêter
défense
tous les
publique
cas qui nous sont
du Rio de
signalés.
Janeiro a
Le
fait
bureau
une
du
étude de
défenseur
11
public
669 personnes
a
emprisonnées entre 2015 et
aussi montré une
2016.
étude qui montre
35%
que
ont
sur
affirmé
plus de
avoir souffert des
1100
agressions. 15%
arrêtés hors Rio
ont dit
de Janeiro,
avoir été victimes de
35% ont
torture. À Bahia,
signalé
la
des
défense
attaques
publique
qui
a
compris des
indiqué
tortures, des mauvais
en
comportements éthiques qui comptent
2017 et
torture.
2019 que
Et
20% des
ensuite,
personnes
entre 2017 et
qui étaient
2019, il a été
détenues
montré que
présentaient des
23 personnes
lésions
des
apparentes qui
personnes
indiquaient
en détention
la
ont pu
torture à
signaler
Salvador.
des
Et
blessures
entre
qui
2015 et 2017, nous avons eu
des cas de torture en Mato Grosso
6589
entre
audiences
2015-2017.
de garde à
Il y a eu
vue à
plus de
Cuiabá,
6000 audiences dans la capitale,
pendant
Cuiabá,
lesquelles il y a eu des
audiences
allégations
en
de
garde à vue.
violence en 15% des cas.
Dans 15% de ces audiences,
Donc, malgré ce
des cas de
pourcentage
violence ont été
significatif
signalés.
de
Donc,
violences
même s'il y
policières
a
pendant la
des
détention que nous
cas
pouvons
élevés
observer
de
pendant ces
violences
études,
qui sont signalés
les
lors
données du système
des
national des
arrestations,
audiences de garde à vue qui
les
comptabilise les
données
informations de
que nous
2015 à
avons entre
2020
2015
registre
et
qu'il y a eu des
2020
indices de torture
montrent
en
qu'il y a
seulement
eu
65%
des
de
cas de
plus
torture
de
signalés dans
725 000 audiences rapportées.
5,65%
Donc, il y a
dans les
une
plus de
situation de
20 000
sous-notification qui est encore
audiences en
très
garde à vue
forte.
qui ont été
Et quoi que l'on puisse observer
examinées. Donc,
que dans les cas où il y a des
même si l'on
notifications,
observe que dans les cas
les juges aient agi pour justement
les
empêcher,
cas ont été
réduire
signalés,
et
les
faire
juges
des
ont travaillé
recherches
pour
sur
réduire
ces
les cas de torture et
allégations.
pour
Il y a encore une
enquêter
très forte sous-notification qui représente un obstacle à la
sur
recherche
les
des cas de
différents cas.
torture dans les
Le
audiences
manque
de garde à
de
vue.
signalement, le manque de notification continue à être un
Avec le
problème.
cas de la pandémie, la situation
Au
a un
début de
peu
la
changé.
pandémie,
Nous avons eu
la situation s'est
au
un
début
peu
une
empirée.
suspension de ces audiences de
Initialement,
garde à vue
il y a
et avec
nous avons
cela une
dû
réduction
suspendre
de
les audiences de
64% dans
garde à vue
l'identification
et
des situations
il y
de
a une augmentation
torture
de 75%
registrées. C'est l'état présent des affaires, ce qui
des
nous
cas
préoccupe un
de
peu.
mauvais traitement dans les enquêtes qui ont été
Et
menées.
cela nous
Pour
donne
notre
une
État,
idée
ce sont des
de
chiffres
la
très alarmants.
situation
Donc
couramment
voilà
pour ce qui a
un
trait
aperçu
à
de
la
la situation
torture dans le
actuelle
contexte des
en
audiences
matière
de
de
garde à vue au
torture
Brésil.
dans les
Merci
audiences
beaucoup,
de
Monsieur
garde à vue
Mario.
au
C'est en
Brésil. Merci
profitant des
beaucoup.
objectifs justement de l'agence qui sont de vérifier si les gens qui sont détenus ont
Si
souffert des
l'objectif
violences
de l'audience
institutionnelles ou des maltraitances depuis le moment de leur arrivée jusqu'à
est de
l'audience.
savoir si la personne a été
Je voudrais
torturée ou a fait
donc
l'objet de mauvais
profiter de la
traitements.
situation pour vous demander quelle a été la conduite des juges pendant ces audiences pour
J'aimerais vous
donner les
demander la
conditions
question
adéquates aux
suivante.
détenus
Comment
pour
le
qu'ils puissent
juge
vraiment rapporter s'ils ont souffert de mauvais
doit-il
traitements et pour faire
garantir
donc le registre et
des
la
conditions dans lesquelles
documentation
les
de
cas
ces
de
rapports et le
torture peuvent
genre de
être signalés
diligence et de
et
solutions
comment faire pour
qui
garantir
peuvent être
que
déterminées par
des
les
rapports soient
magistrats une
établis à
fois
ce
ayant
sujet. Donc, quelles sont les mesures
entendu ces
et
rapports.
les décisions que doivent
L'audience de
prendre les
garde à
juges
vue
lorsqu'ils
a été réglementée en
prennent
2015 par le
connaissance de
Conseil
ces
national de
rapports. Donc,
justice
les
dans la
audiences ont
résolution
été créées
213
en 2015 avec la
qui
résolution
a
2013
créé des dispositifs
qui
pour que
prévoit
les
des
juges puissent agir
dispositions
dans ces situations.
sur la manière dont les juges doivent agir
L'audience
dans ce cas de
se
figure.
base
Donc,
sur
les audiences de
deux
garde à vue
principes fondamentaux. En
se
premier lieu,
fondent
les tribunaux doivent offrir des
sur
conditions
deux
adéquates pour une
hypothèses. Tout
audience qui
d'abord,
soit
il faut que les
sécurisée
juges
et pour pouvoir bien écouter la
prennent
personne
les
en
mesures
détention
pour
dans des
garantir
conditions
que
adéquates qui rendent
ces audiences
possible
se
leur
déroulent dans de bonnes
déposition et
conditions,
empêchent
que les
quelques menaces en
personnes arrêtées
potentiel
ne
d'avoir
soient
lieu.
ni
Et
menacées,
nous essayons également de suivre un second point. Les juges
ne fassent pas l'objet
doivent
d'intimidation.
avoir
Ensuite,
une
deuxièmement, les juges doivent
position très ferme et très vigilante pour empêcher les violences institutionnelles et déterminer les dispositifs nécessaires et les mesures dans les cas où il y aurait des agressions physiques ou psychologiques. Et dans ce sens, le protocole 2 de cette résolution 213 nous donne des recommandations dans le sens où les victimes, par exemple, les détenus ne doivent pas porter des menottes, excepté dans les cas justifiés disons, de violence. Ils doivent être accompagnés de leur avocat et ne pas être entendus dans la présence des policiers qui ont effectué la détention. Et le juge doit également informer dans un langage très clair et accessible les détenus sur leurs droits, les objectifs de l'audience de garde à vue et éclaircir dès le début que la torture est absolument inacceptable et interdite, ce qui est une mesure, entre autres, fondamentale pour nous pour rendre ce genre d'attitude de torture tout à fait inacceptable dans le milieu policier où elle existe encore. En plus de ces éléments, pour la collecte des dépositions, la résolution nous donne également des questionnaires pour donner une orientation aux juges pour quand ils seront en train de vérifier les détenus pour voir s'il y a des signes visibles de torture ou même pour recevoir leur rapport sur leur situation. Dans ces situations, les juges doivent prendre des mesures pour assurer la sécurité des personnes qui sont emprisonnées et doivent également éviter que ces personnes continuent d'être exposées à ces agents qui ont été disons, culpabilisés ou chargés des mesures de torture et doivent prendre des mesures pour prendre les descriptions minutieuses de la situation et de toutes les personnes impliquées. Il doit y avoir un enregistrement photographique des marques pour faire une documentation des preuves parce qu'ensuite, les séquelles, les marques des blessures s'effacent avec le temps. Il faut donc les photographier et il est nécessaire également de déterminer un examen médical et assurer qu'il y ait une attention donnée à la santé des détenus pour réduire les dommages et la souffrance physique et mentale et donner également un nouveau sens à leur vie. Et en prenant donc la déposition de ces détenus et en envoyant tous ces documents et ces preuves et ces dépositions aux organes qui sont chargés de cette supervision contre la torture, donc au corps policier et au corps de la justice. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup de nous souligner ces recommandations qui sont données aux juges. Je vais vous adresser seulement quelques questions et je vais passer la parole aux autres orateurs, oratrices, pour qu'elles vous posent des questions. Il y a donc des questions qu'elles veulent vous poser. Je passe la parole à Madame Aina de Madagascar pour savoir si elle a une question. Et Madame Porpen de Thaïlande également.
Merci beaucoup pour cette approche très intéressante et pour le rôle joué par le juge quant aux détenus. Je suis très jalouse ici en Thaïlande.
Regarding to custody hearings for the first time. However, I think in Thai law, we also have that provision that the judge can review the charge and be able to meet with the detainees after procedures at the police and the prosecutor within 48 hours. That is to say that the judge have to see and inform the charge to the arrested person. But in Thailand, we use the teleconference. So the person is actually not meeting the judge in person, but meeting like Zoom, like this. And you have the collection department officer around you and also the court security guard around the detainees. If the judge from Brazil have got to do that in Thailand, do your same job, what would you want it to do?
Si le juge devait faire le même travail, qu'est-ce que vous feriez? Nous avons une expérience dans laquelle le juge n'est confronté aux détenus que par le biais de la télévision, d'un écran, si vous voulez. Et donc, on lui demande, est-ce que vous avez des objections quant à l'ordonnance de détention que je vais vous rendre? Et la personne répondra non, puisque il y a déjà beaucoup de choses qui se sont passées pendant ces 48 heures. Donc, si vous êtes juge en Thaïlande dans ces conditions, qu'est-ce que vous feriez? Comment pourriez-vous nous aider à changer le système? Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup de votre question, Aina. Je crois que Mme Aina ne désire pas poser de questions. Non, si, elle veut parler.
Oui, bonjour. Bonjour à tous une fois encore. Et merci de m'avoir...
momento, doutor Mário, o senhor está ouvindo a tradução? Está tudo certo aí para escutar as perguntas? Só para conferir. Sim, o doutor Mário está escutando as perguntas em português? Sim, ok. Sim, pode
Je
continuar.
continue à parler, comme ça on saura si longtemps. D'accord. Merci beaucoup pour m'avoir passé la parole. À Madagascar, l'audience préliminaire se fait par ce que nous appelons procédure en flagrant délit. Donc, seules les infractions commises en flagrant délit sont traitées directement par les juges. Mais sinon, depuis 2 années, nous avons adopté un système que nous avons appelé traitement en temps réel des dossiers. En fait, il s'agissait de l'application, je dirais, littérale des dispositions de code de procédure pénale, comme quoi, dès l'arrestation d'une personne qu'on doit garder à vue, l'officier de police judiciaire doit en rendre compte au juge du parquet, pour qu'il puisse donc nous donner des instructions sur la suite à donner du dossier. Mais ce système n'inclut pas donc la présentation immédiate de la personne suspecte devant le parquet. Mais le parquet nous dit tout simplement donc de garder à vue ou de présenter tout de suite, donc selon donc le contenu du dossier, suivant le compte rendu donc de l'OPJ. Donc,
on the content of the case. As my colleague from Thailand said before, several hours have gone by before the prosecutor or the judge was able to really see what happened in case, for example, there were acts of violence after the arrest.
Ou logo após, e a experiência brasileira
después y la experiencia brasileña.
Even more so because of the large number of inhabitants in Madagascar. The government is working on implementing security governance. So we have multiplied the structures of judiciary police in Madagascar. We have 119 of those structures. And I think it would be interesting to have the same experience as they have in Brazil, because that would reduce acts of violence and torture. Thank you.
Perfeito. Muito obrigada, doutora Ana. Doutor Mário, passa a palavra.
Thank you. So, Judge Mario, we have 4 minutes for you to answer the questions. Concerning the first question, I think during the pandemic, we had to change the dynamics of the custody hearings. Here in Brazil, we've had different moments. The pandemic is challenging and very dynamic, so we must review some procedures. So at the first moment, we recommended the judges not to have custody hearings. Firstly, to prevent the social contact and the dissemination of the virus, but also to prevent that we created a culture of custody hearing via video conference, because that was not desirable initially. But the pandemic lasted much more than we could imagine. And in the end, this judiciary conduct was harmful for the detainees because they couldn't be heard by the judges. Today, the current orientation from the National Council of Justice is that it is possible to have custody hearing via video conference, but in this case, there are some requirements for that to happen. First, it should be happening in a room where only the lawyer and the detainee are, no police officers, and also it should be a room with a camera that is 360 degrees so that the judge is able to see the entire room. Third, the detainee has the right of having a lawyer with them, and also in the custody hearing room if it's happening in the court. So we tried to give some additional guarantees so that this could happen via video conference. This is not ideal. The ideal would have the immediate contact between the judge and the detainee, but we consider that less worse, so to speak, than not having the custody hearing. And we hope to return to the normality as soon as possible. And the Supreme Court in Brazil has recently decided that the custody hearing should happen in any arrest, not only arrests in flagrante delicto. A prison that comes after escape of a detainee, for instance. So we have several situations where a police officer could commit violence against the detainee. So not only the flagrante delicto arrest. So I'm going to wrap up because my time is up. I thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mario, for your participation with all the information that you brought. And we'll move on in our dialogue. And I'm going to give the floor to Ben.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge, for your presentation and excellent information you provided. You will have the opportunity to respond to more questions in the second part of the debate. And we're also receiving lots of questions and answers. So please, everyone, don't hesitate to put your questions into writing. We'll take them in the second part of the debate. So now let's move to another part of the world, to Madagascar, where we have been supporting the Ministry of Public Security in piloting a detention register in some police stations, as well as a letter of rights for detainees. So we will hear now from the Police Commissioner, Aina Randrayambelo, how this is working. And Aina will respond to the questions from Ben Buckland, our Senior Advisor on Oversight and Learning Development. Ben, the floor is yours. Aina as well, you have 25 minutes, more or less. And the rest, Mario and Noy will be also able to ask questions at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous. Je vais parler en
Good
français.
afternoon, everybody. I will speak French for this part of the webinar. It is with great pleasure that I am here with you all today with our partner, Aina, who is a police commissioner, but also head of the cabinet for the Ministry of Public Security. And
deux nouveaux outils, un registre standardisé de garde à vous et aussi une lettre de droit qui est lue à toutes les personnes entrant en garde à vous. Et ces nouveaux outils sont encore de déploiement dans tous les postes de police du pays. Aina elle a joué vraiment un rôle clé dans l'avancement de ce projet. Nous n'aurions été absolument nulle part sans elle et sans sa coopération. Donc, merci Aina. Pour commencer, nous travaillons, comme je disais, ensemble depuis quelques années maintenant. Et pouvez-vous, juste pour commencer, nous raconter un peu l'histoire du projet et surtout pourquoi vous avez décidé de vous engager dans cette coopération avec nous?
Merci. Donc, Je vous parle à partir de mon île qui se trouve donc au milieu de l'océan Indien. J'ai eu donc en 2017, je crois, l'opportunité de participer à de tables rondes organisées par le Croix-Rouge international et l'APT sur justement les droits de la défense. Et on a pu donc exposer nos difficultés, nos défis à Madagascar par rapport à la réalisation des droits de la défense et plus particulièrement au niveau donc des services de police. Et c'est à partir donc de cette discussion, de cette table ronde enrichie par le partage d'expériences de plus d'une vingtaine de pays qu'est né donc ce projet. Et après, on avait discuté avec, à l'époque, il y avait Jean-Baptiste qui était à l'APT avec Anne. Et voilà, en 2018, octobre 2018, on a signé une convention entre l'Association pour la prévention de la torture et le ministère de la Sécurité publique, qui est le ministère donc en charge de la police nationale à Madagascar. Pourquoi on était conscient? Parce que on avait constaté quand même que même sur certains points, Madagascar était sur le même pied d'égalité que les autres pays. Mais par rapport à notre difficulté, à la précarité donc de la vie et par rapport à l'éternelle insuffisance de moyens matériels pour les policiers, on avait pensé que pourquoi ne pas travailler sur les individus, sur les personnes qui vont appliquer les lois. Parce que, en fait, en réalité, si les lois sont bien appliquées, si les droits sont bien protégés, c'est parce que les gens qui les appliquent en sont conscients et sont vraiment, comment dirais-je, ils sont convaincus de l'importance de l'application de ces droits et de leur impact sur les usagers des services publics et au final sur la population en général.
Merci, Aina. Maintenant, les lettres de droit et les registres sont utilisés dans un certain nombre de postes de police pilotes. Mais quelle a été la réaction de la police lorsque vous avez proposé ces nouveaux outils? Avait-il des grandes objections et comment sont-ils perçus maintenant, après quelques années?
On avait commencé avec 4 services de police. Et maintenant, donc, nous sommes à 30 services. La déclaration de droits, donc c'est le fait de faire la lecture des droits fondamentaux liés aux droits de la défense à la personne qui est en détention préventive au niveau de la police, des services de police. Imaginez dans un pays où la police a été toujours considérée comme une force répressive, comme un détenteur de pouvoir pour oppresser la population. Donc, il y avait cette image vraiment, je dirais, très négative de la police nationale vis-à-vis de la population. Et même, les agents de police pensaient qu'ils avaient ce pouvoir-là. Ce pouvoir de faire ce qu'ils veulent parce qu'ils ont, en fait, ils pensaient que c'est la loi qui les autorise à le faire. Et voilà donc que la situation est renversée, que la personne qui arrive, on lui dit, on lui déclare, on les incite même donc à jouir de leurs droits. Pour certains policiers, c'était inadmissible. Ils pensaient que quelques pouvoirs s'effritent qu'ils n'ont plus donc la domination de la situation, que ce sont les usagers qui vont dicter donc la loi dans le cadre d'une enquête policière. Ça, c'était donc la première impression des policiers. Et effectivement, au tout début, ils étaient réticents. On a dû faire des formations, des informations, des suivis, des argumentations et des cadres logiques qu'on a élaborés pour leur expliquer c'est quoi l'objectif, pourquoi on le fait. Et en ce qui concerne la police de Madagascar, je dirais que les dispositions constitutionnelles nous a facilité les choses. Et ce qui est écrit dans notre statut général autonome qui stipule donc que la police a l'obligation de protéger les droits humains. Bon, maintenant, quand on a fait l'évaluation, ils sont conscients donc que ce n'est pas dans le seul sens à l'avantage des usagers, mais il y a un retour également pour les policiers. Parce que, bon, si c'est pour les usagers, c'est pour qu'ils puissent donc jouir pleinement de leurs droits à l'avocat, d'être examinés par les médecins, de savoir la durée légale de leur détention, de pouvoir s'offrir le minimum de confort en termes de nourriture ou si jamais les médicaments s'ils doivent en prendre, l'accès à l'interprète et aux avocats. Mais dans l'autre sens, maintenant les policiers sont plus conscients que ces outils retracent les actes qu'ils ont effectués durant donc les enquêtes, les arrestations et tout ça. Et cela a contribué à les responsabiliser dans leur fonction d'officier de police judiciaire. Et ce registre peut également constituer une preuve à des charges si jamais il y a une doléance pour une quelconque action ou acte qui a été commis donc par un policier. Ce registre, cette déclaration de droit constitue également donc un outil précieux qui les rappelle à chaque fois qu'ils en font la lecture de leurs obligations en ce qui concerne les droits des personnes qui sont devant eux. Maintenant, est-ce que je peux affirmer qu'ils les ont adoptés? Je dirais dans la généralité, parce qu'on avait fait dernièrement, fin mois de décembre, l'évaluation, et maintenant ils sont conscients. Certes, il y a toujours quelques difficultés d'adaptation, mais ils ont approprié donc ces outils parce que maintenant ils sont conscients que ce n'est pas uniquement pour les usagers des services publics, mais également pour nous, policiers.
Merci, Aina. C'est extrêmement intéressant de voir cette évolution dans les pratiques et dans la compréhension et l'esprit des différents policiers. Avant de poser ma prochaine question, je voulais simplement avertir les autres juges Mario et Noé qu'après cette question-réponse, que vous avez également la possibilité de poser des questions pour Aina. Donc, préparez-vous. Donc, Aina, je crois que ces nouveaux outils participent à la mise en œuvre de cette nouvelle loi contre la torture à Madagascar. Ont-ils changé? Vous avez parlé déjà un tout petit peu de cet aspect, mais pour moi, c'est très intéressant de savoir s'ils ont changé la façon dont la police approche la lutte contre la torture et surtout à changer la perception des services de police par la population malgache.
En fait, la prévention de la torture torture constitue donc, je dirais, l'un des premiers impacts sur l'utilisation de ces outils. On a que de torture ou autre violence au niveau des services, je dirais quand les gens sont arrivés au service. Ça, l'inspection générale de la police nationale a pu constater qu'il y avait une nette réduction de doléances par rapport à des actes de torture ou d'abus quand les gens sont déjà au niveau des services de police. Ben, ça veut dire peut-être quelque part en cours de l'interpellation ou d'arrestation, il y a quand même quelques violences, si on peut l'exprimer ainsi, parce que des fois aussi les gens résistent et quand ils sont obligés d'utiliser la force, donc il y a toujours deux intérêts en conflit. Mais on peut le dire que ça a contribué énormément à la mise en œuvre également de cette loi sur la torture. Mais une chose aussi, elle a contribué, l'utilisation donc de ces outils a également contribué à une nette réduction de la corruption. Mais vous allez me demander dans quel sens, parce que auparavant, tous les, comment dirais-je, les droits sont monnayés. Vous voulez manger, il faut payer. Vous voulez parler avec votre famille, il faut payer. Vous voulez avoir un coin, je dirais, plus confortable dans la cellule, il faut payer. Donc ça, c'est plus tard qu'on a pu constater donc cet impact parce qu'on était focalisé sur la prévention de la torture. Mais ça, c'est un autre paramètre qu'on a pu donc constater. Et du coup, lors de la dernière évaluation, on a pu également relever qu'il n'y a plus de garde à vue systématique. Il n'y a plus de mise en examen systématique lors des contrôles d'identité sur la voie publique. Et le système de traitement en temps réel des dossiers également a renforcé donc cette lutte qui a donné une nouvelle approche donc de la pratique des policiers qui travaillent au niveau des services de police judiciaire. Car il ne faut pas se voiler la face parce que pour les policiers auparavant, travailler dans un service de police judiciaire et faire l'enquête, pour eux, c'est vraiment un bon poste parce que là, ils peuvent faire leurs petites affaires et menacent vraiment les gens par la torture pour pratiquer la corruption. Avec l'avènement des réseaux sociaux, la population est vraiment nous scrute et les gens n'hésitaient pas à publier sur Facebook les violences policières, les abus. Donc, du coup, je ne sais pas si c'est une coïncidence, mais il y a beaucoup de choses qui se sont vraiment développées et qui nous ont, je dirais, contraints vraiment à se remettre dans le droit chemin qui est donc la promotion, le respect et la protection des droits de l'homme et plus particulièrement le droit de la défense parce que c'est seulement aujourd'hui donc on est vraiment en plein du code de procédure pénale à Madagascar qui a donc mis en place les 3 heures d'attente des avocats, le demi-heure d'entretien de l'avocat avec son client, la réduction du temps de garde à vue des personnes mineures à 24 heures. Donc, voilà, je dirais que c'est vraiment, c'est tout le système qui est en train de se développer, le sens donc du respect du droit de la défense. Et la population est là aussi, qui nous surveille, qui n'hésite pas à taper et de plus en plus. Donc, les gens dénoncent les différentes, les éventuels abus et tout ça. Et voilà ce que je peux dire.
Merci beaucoup, Aina. Je crois que réduire le niveau de corruption n'était pas du tout parmi nos objectifs au début du projet.
On n'a
Mais
pas
c'est
pensé
très
à ça.
intéressant de voir comment la mise en œuvre des différents outils peut avoir différents résultats positifs. Je sais qu'on n'a pas beaucoup de temps, mais j'aimerais bien donner très vite la parole à juge Mario, si vous avez des questions, ou sinon notre collègue Noé au Thaïlande. Juge Mario.
Sim, obrigado. Vou fazer duas perguntas rápidas para, enfim, a gente poder seguir em frente. Duas questões que me chamaram a atenção. A primeira...
What called my attention was that sometimes the police officers, they claim that there was resistance. In Brazil, this is very common. Many times a torture situation become a homicide situation. So the detainee is killed not to report torture. And then the police officers say that the detainee resisted, and that's why they ended up being killed. Within the Brazilian prisons, it's very common, this practice of charging for getting a better food or sleeping in a better place. But those who are doing that are not the police officers, but the leader of criminal gangs that are within the prisons. So I would like to ask you if you have a similar situation there. If you have the domain of organized crime, or if the police officers are in reality leading the corruption within the prisons.
Just, Aina, avant de répondre, si je peux demander à Noé si
Aina,
elle a des questions, et comme ça vous
do you
pouvez
have any
répondre
questions?
à toutes les
That
questions.
way you could answer both questions at the same time.
Okay. Thank you very much for the situation, and it seemed to be very difficult to prevent torture also in the context of Madagascar. May I ask about the secret detention? Would that something that your experience has come across? Because since you are mentioning about corruption, we have also a situation where the detainee would be presented to the officials after spending some hours or days in a safe house before they appear in a former criminal procedures. Just checking whether that situation also happened in Madagascar, because we have the case where a number of detainees were kept or detained before they actually register in a proper detention facilities or within the police.
Merci, Noé. Aina, je crois que vous avez peut-être...
Thank you, Noé. You now have 1 or 2 minutes to answer these questions, and we'll give you more time afterwards to answer in more detail during the question and answer session. But if you don't mind giving us a quick preliminary answer, that would be useful. With regard to the question asked by Judge Mario Guerrero, well, there's always a certain amount of resistance. It's also the case in Madagascar, but now they will be able to resist outside of the service, but no longer within. We don't have...
Ce qui se passe, mais il y a toujours des gens qui sont témoins, et nous, notre politique, c'est vraiment la tolérance zéro par rapport à tout ce qui est torture et violence policière, mais de moins en moins, ça se passait plus au niveau des services de police. Mais moi, je ne peux pas dire que ceux qui sont durant les arrestations, je ne peux pas certifier que est-ce que c'était vraiment ce qu'il fallait faire quand ils abattent les bandits. Moi, je ne peux pas l'affirmer est-ce que c'est un cas de violation du droit de la défense de ne pas laisser les gens être arrêtés vivants. Mais il y en a aussi à Madagascar. Et comme nous avons ce que nous appelons la grande criminalité, au niveau de la criminalité rurale, surtout les Dahalou, sûrement que vous en avez entendu parler, qui débarquent donc, qui brûlent, qui violent, qui tuent à coups de hache et de coupe-coupe et de fusils de chasse et qui rasent tout un village entier. Et après, donc, quand la gendarmerie, la police effectuent la poursuite, évidemment, donc, il y a toujours des échanges de tirs, mais je ne peux pas affirmer qu'il y avait vraiment des exécutions sommaires ou non. En tout cas, pas dans les services de police. Pour ce qui est de votre deuxième question, en fait, j'ai évoqué ce qui s'est passé au niveau de la police judiciaire, c'est-à-dire au niveau de la police pour les enquêtes avant la présentation des personnes au parquet. Mais par rapport à ce qui se passe au niveau des prisons de Madagascar, la CAT Madagascar travaille au niveau des prisons, mais c'est toujours une pratique qui se fait, mais pas aussi flagrant qu'auparavant, où des grands criminels peuvent sortir escortés par des gardes pénitentiaires. Donc ça se pratique plus, disons, pas aussi ouvertement qu'auparavant, mais c'est également une pratique qui se fait à Madagascar pour se faire entrer un petit quelque chose, pour avoir un petit confort en prison. Ça se fait. Merci.
Merci Aina, et je redonnerai maintenant la parole à Audrey pour continuer la session et on aura, comme je disais, l'opportunité d'entendre encore plus de votre expérience un peu plus tard. Merci beaucoup Aina et merci aux autres panélistes.
Thank you very much, Aina and Ben, for this fascinating discussion. You have raised lots of questions.
Merci beaucoup, Aina et Ben, pour cette discussion. Vous avez aussi posé des questions dans les questions.
We're going to take them in the next session. So now we're going to move to Thailand, where the APT we've been working with the Ministry of Justice and civil society organizations, in particular the Cross Cultural Foundation, on the implementation of two main safeguards: the notification of relatives about one's detention and the information about rights. So we're very lucky to have with us Ponpen Konkalkonchi, the Executive Director of Cross Cultural Foundation, who's joining us even it's quite late in Thailand. And she will respond to the questions asked by Shazira Zawawi, Senior Advisor, Research and Innovation, with the support of Andra Nicolescu, Senior Advisor in Law Policy. Thank you so much. You have more or less 25 minutes as well.
Thank you, Andra. Thank you, Audrey, for the presentation for the next session. So, and also to give a bit of an overview of our cooperation in Thailand. And we are very honored to have Nonoy here. And I just want to give a bit of an overview in terms of the project in Thailand. That in Thailand, it's really interesting because we work with a broad range of actors. So we don't really just work with the government agency or the authorities, but we also work with the civil society organizations directly. And we are very, very honored to have Nonoy from Cross Culture Foundation as our main partner in Thailand for the project in Thailand. And the topic today, creativity and resilience, is a dedication to how difficult the situation is in Thailand at the moment with the political instability, but how the partners in Thailand has been cultivating hope and paving the way for change where torture prevention is concerned, especially work by our partners such as Nonoy. So my first question to Nonoy, and I have to say that Nonoy last minute shared with us a very, very nice presentation. And as this is about creativity, I felt I will just share the presentation using my screen as I chat with her, because some of this photo speaks volume to the kind of creativity of the work that has been done in Thailand. So I'll share now.
Hello, everyone. I wait for presentation, or should I start now?
Yeah, we can. Hold on.
Okay, it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Okay, Noi. I think this particular slide is really about the first question that we have for you, which is what are the main challenges? Give us a bit of the context in Thailand when it comes to person arrested during the first hour in custody, and what are the challenges that you faced with that regard?
Okay, as we are a very small foundation, so we only monitor in some certain situations, and you can see that we delegate our shortage of resources, but focusing on a very unrest situation. For example, this in the past 1 year or 10 months, we are facing the kind of protest, political protests, calling for democracy, calling for ending dictator, and also other reform, including on the monarchy. So we have facing difficulty when the police force has used excessive force, including water cannon, also more like a troops that they are going to fight with the enemy in the middle of Bangkok. And also in the second part of the projector here is the situation where we are working with APT before the unrest happened in Bangkok. So we are also working in another context where we have the armed conflict. It's the region called Pattani and is consisting of 2 million people, Malayu Muslims. So this is almost everyday life of the local people. But look into this. This is in a small school. So you can see the volume of the militarization that had been also happening in the Deep South. So when we are looking to few hours of the detentions, we are looking to an unrest and not a peace time in Thailand. And so we need to use a lot of creativity, resilience, and also the way out to communicate to the public and authorities about the respect to the human rights of the arrested or those who are in contact with the law enforcement officer.
And what is interesting is even before we start our cooperation under the project, we enter into a memorandum of understanding with Cross Culture in 2018 to work closely on the project. Contextually, the Thai civil society has always been creative in its approach, and in a way, the project is building on a strategy that has been used broadly in Thailand. But can you speak a bit more about how during our cooperation, we inculcate more of that, more of the sense of creativity, storytelling, visuals, cartoons, photography, which is actually a big part of the project that we do in Thailand.
Yes, and thanks to APT and also the approach that we have been using. I mean, all these presentation coming to cartoon, photo exhibitions, and body map and other activities is based on the true story of the victims of torture. We have also a baseline study where our partner is understanding and including APT about the situation. So we use photograph of the actual torture victims, but we don't tell or describe what happened, but we only did it in the middle of Bangkok and people walk through. So we only have a photographer and volunteer to present the story of individual, but not putting in names and and telling everyone that they are torture victims. Only those who are showing interest and empathy. So we would tell them deeper and deeper about who they are and why they are representing them here. And that exhibition called Gray Zone. And also, maybe the next one, we also using the activity like producing some poster with bright color. So people are willing to show during the protest. And these are the leader of the protest in the past 10 months. So when they get arrested and then when they deny bail, we will ask the artists to draw their face and putting the word free Lung, free penguin, free army. And this has been also used in many protests, which count to 100 times in Bangkok, you know. I mean, in terms of they're also happening in different cities in Thailand as well. More like in Myanmar now that we have that month in the past on the protests all over Thailand. And these are very well received by the young people. And they also questioning about why these people are not being bailed out. And all those people also experience ill treatment when they enter into the prisons. And arrest time as well. Some of them has also been hurt and detained in the truck and also detained in a far away detention center. Even they were subjected to the police in Bangkok, but they were still being taken away very far to outskirts of Bangkok, where the lawyer are denied access for the first few hours and the phone was confiscated, and also detention or arrest at nighttime, which has always reported in the Deep South, but now we get that report also right in Bangkok. Maybe.
I think, yeah, no, I think you come to a very interesting point. Yes, because what is interesting, I think, to also give some context to our audience, that we work with different actors in Thailand. And while we work more on building confidence and trust with law enforcement and government agencies, as well as building capacity of law enforcement on the other spectrum of the project, I think with the civil society, our work focus more on building awareness and developing tools that could help public understand about their rights when they are arrested, particularly right to information and notification of family.
Yes.
So can you maybe perhaps share a bit more about the tools that we develop under the project, that we use a lot of creativity, and whether and to what extent these materials and tools have been helpful and useful to your work in your advocacy in Thailand?
Okay, so this piece of information with drawing in a cartoon way and also have a QR code. It has simple message, but it's attractive in a way that people are well accepted and put it in, received it and put it in their workplace or their home, and they carry it all over. And we use it mostly for the past 2 years only in the Deep South. I mean, where the arrest and detention has a lot of problems in terms of prevention of other mechanism to protect their human rights. But lucky that in the past few months, we have distributed right in Bangkok for the leader of the protest. And it's again, because it's very simple and easy to understand. So the student, protester, and also youngster, new generation look into this cartoon and short messages. They understand it immediately that this is their rights that they needed to promote, and they also use it, the simple questions to the police. Why don't you give this right to us? Why you using the plastic over the finger during the arrest time, and or denying to go with the police without lawyer? Or these students are acting very firmly on this basic human rights, which people in the Deep South are not as brave I mean, the situation is quite different, but they know their rights and they insist their rights. So we have a lot of report from the student movement about the ill treatment, even though they were threatened and intimidated and also experienced badly, but they still communicate, and that is very important, where the victim themselves can communicate their firm understanding about their basic rights.
Another, I think you made a very important point about how the development of the tools and materials throughout the project is very much bringing in the dimensions and the perspective of the former detainees and torture survivors, which is not very typical for APT. But then we are kind of like going into this area where we feel it's important to have that perspective included in how we develop our tools at the national level. Now, for the next presentations, I think it will be also interesting for you to tell a bit more about, in addition to cartoons and visuals, you also use a lot of, for instance, diagrams, visualization of data, even media, to convey the information about safeguards during the first hour of detention. And I think some of this that you show to us today is very, very interesting for others to know. Can you tell us a bit more about these tools?
I think because of the situation is not allow us to talk a lot because of the space in the media, and also many topics has been discussed in Thailand. So we are trying to simplifying information, and it's not, I have to admit that our resources within the office is not enough. So we have actually got some volunteer, like student volunteer, who come in and said, can I help you to do this? And they said a lot of project is coming through the volunteer. So the drawing is coming from the student interns, and also the body map is also coming from the artists who approach us with this proposal, and we continue working with them. And this exhibition also are very much well received by the victims, the family, the artists, and us, but it's not making authority happy as yet, because the picture of the body map has shown a lot of suffering from the victim of torture in the Deep South. And we also have presented in the exhibition hall, exhibition area in Pattani, and we also producing the book, and we also are holding the seminar. But again, no matter how much we trying, but the space of mainstream media in Bangkok as a whole are not yet for us. So we need to do more. And also the another way that we wanted to communicate is short documentary. We also get some support from the local film producer who picking up some story and come to us and said, could we do this? Can you supply us for more information? And so these are very excellent film that I would recommend everyone to have a look. And it's the name is Apology. It's linked to the situation of enforced disappearances in the past of 64 years ago, when the imam was abducted together with another 3 guys. But we produce it on the day or a few months after a young activist happened to be abducted in Cambodia and sparking a lot of protests in Bangkok. So we're trying very creatively to link the situation in the Deep South, sharing common interest on enforced disappearances, to the new case of young activists who was abducted. So a lot of brain and assistance from friends is very important who want to help with their own expertise. We are not expert on anything as presented, but we get some help from the others.
Thank you, Noi. I think you are being a bit too humble in that sense. And I remember what Barbara said when she was also at the forum for the exhibition of Grey Zone, where creative work not only speaks to the brain, but also speaks to the heart. And that's very, very important to affect change with the public. So we'll stop here. And now I would like to invite other panelists who might have questions or maybe want to offer your insights to Nono's presentation. May I invite perhaps Judge Mario first, if you have anything to say or anything to add?
Sim, aqui no Brasil e em outros países da América do Sul, nós, infelizmente, também já vivenciamos momentos autoritários, né, de governos, enfim, ditatoriais que tinham
governments that had as a customary practice torture, forced disappearances. And in the transition to democratic regimes, it was very important what we called the transitional justice, like the Commission of Truth and other initiatives in the sense of restoring the social relationships that were damaged. So my first question is there any similar initiative there? And my second question is, what is the position and the role of the judiciary while fighting against this kind of violent work from the police?
Thank you, Judge Mario. May I also invite Aina to, if you have anything to add to the conversation? Or, okay. Well, as been said before, we have more space for debate and interaction after this. So don't worry, we'll get back to any of the questions or presentation that you may have. But now I will revert to Nonoi if you want to respond to Judge Mario's question.
Thank you very much. And the two questions is very relevant to the situation in Thailand. No? We also are being a part of, it's called Transitional Justice Asia Network, which is a part of AJA, Asian Justice and Rights. And we are a beginner to learn about transitional justice because the conflict in Thailand is prolonging, and even it's very rooted in our culture and custom, especially with the monarchy and with the judiciary and also with the Buddhism. And somehow we are stuck in a conflict where it has not yet in the way that the transitional justice through like the truth, prosecution, remedy and reform, it had started. But in every part of our work, everyday life, including in individual torture case, enforced disappearances case or detention case, we are trying to use these 4 pillars into different individual cases. But we don't yet have the moment where the political will is actually allow us to use the transitional justice in the way that many countries has been applied and successful. So we are learning and we are trying to also producing some understanding with academic, with the judge, with the prosecutor and with the police to understand this context. We did a very good job on remedy. We have a lot of compensation in cash by the military government. We also have a lot of compensation which granted by the judge comparing to other countries in Asia, but we don't have the criminal reliability or transparent investigation enough or independent judiciary. The second question that you have, in order to bring the perpetrator to justice and actually stop non-recurring, not thing to happen again. No? So judiciary is another issue that we felt that we needed to continue telling the the world that our judiciary is not independent. But to look into outside, it seems that we have a very good law, very good judges. But if you look into the context of Thailand, the judiciary is very much depend on the policy. And we also have the problems of now for our student activists and the lawyer activists are now deny bail, just the case of Les Majesté. And the bail has been proposed by quite a senior supporter in the country. So it's really something to do on reform. And first thing to reform in Thailand is the law community, judges, law school. Sorry to say, we have also our law professor in our forum from Thailand, but I think a lot of things need to be reformed. And the first thing, if I have power, would be all this lawyer community in Thailand.
Thank you so much, Nonoi, for your response. I think it's very inspiring. And I think drawing from the presentation that you share in terms of building confidence and trust in Thailand, it also started with raising awareness and empowering the public with the right information. And that's where creativity and resilience is key. So I think that's it for the session from Thailand. And I hand over back to you, Audrey.
Thank you very much, Shazira. And as you, thank you so much, Noi, and for sharing all these elements of the work and lots of food for thought. We could see lots of questions on the question and answer chat. We have now more or less 40 minutes for another exchange. And as you know, as Zoom is working, we have unfortunately lost a bit the connection with Aina. So we are trying to get her back on the call. Sorry for that. And we really hope she comes back so then we can also share the questions with her. We also, for this specific session, planned that we could hear from other partners, other people, stakeholders we've been working with in Brazil, Madagascar, in Thailand. And again, the Zoom hasn't been on our side today, so we have issue with connection from some of our partners. But we do have two stakeholders from Thailand. So if you allow me, I would invite two of our partners in Thailand to give a very short contribution and complement Noi's presentation. And after that, my colleague Alexi is going to read a few questions from the floor, and we'll give the floor to Mario and to Noi, and then to Aina when she comes back. And if she is not able to join, we'll share all the questions with her, and we'll share it again with you panelists and participants. So I would like to invite our first speaker contribution from Narelak Pechayapum from Thailand. If you could provide your views and complement the presentation given. You have, well, yes, 2-3 minutes to do that. Thanks so much, Narelak.
Yeah, thank you so much, Audrey. Can you hear me? Good? Okay. First of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Justice, Thailand, I'd like to thank APT, especially Shazira, Andra, Barbara, Audrey, for a good work with us for many years and good collaboration for many years, especially during the past 3 years when we have MOU together. I think so far we have successfully conducted a number of activities. For example, the develop the handbook, training to kids, and thanks for their lovely cartoon drawing from Shazira, and it was very useful. And of course, and you also help us in being a speaker in our online media as well. And we sure that our work is definitely useful for and benefit for the relevant agency, especially the law enforcement officer in Thailand. Regarding, I think would like to share the lesson learned from during the past 3-year project. I think I have like kind of few points that I like to share with all of you. First, I think prevention, of course, is the key. to tackle the problem of torture. Second, I think to work on the issue of torture is not easy, of course, and sometimes full of challenges. And in Thailand, law enforcement officer still have misunderstanding about the concept of Convention Against Torture, and sometimes they raise a number of concerns. So I think first thing that we have to address the practitioner concern first before and by continue raising awareness, and also the awareness raising and a correct understanding is necessary before we moving into the actual implementation of the law in the future. And third, I think integration with relevant organization is the key to success. And for our next step, I think of course the awareness raising is something that we have to continue work on it, and not only with the practitioner but also with the policy level as well. So we are open in this regard. We are open for all technical assistance, and thanks for the assistance from the APT as well. And we would love to continue a good collaboration with APT. And secondly, I think since in Thailand we have a national committee on addressing and problem of torture and enforced disappearance, and we also have subcommittee on follow-up, prevention, and screening, and also remedy of the torture and enforced disappearance. So we have, with this national committee and subcommittee, is kind of the national mechanism to prevent the problem of torture. So I think this is the current existing national committee. So I think from our perspective, I think we need to continue to strengthen their capacity to make sure of their effective work. And lastly, I would like to make sure that in order to make sure that our convention will be implemented at the domestic level, I think me and Kun Noi are work very hard in many years, I think more than 10 years, that we are trying to propose for the enactment of the anti-torture bill in Thailand. And I'm sure that we will have continue our collaboration in proposing this law to make sure that the prevention of torture will be implemented in Thailand. And I will join hand with all the stakeholders and of course including APT to make this successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vilik, for the compliments, and thank you so much also for joining. I know it's late in Thailand. So we would like also to hear from Professor Narong Jaihan, also for Thailand, if you want also to complement. We're trying to get Aina back on the call, and we had also planned to give the floor to Marcos Valeiros, a judge from Mato Grosso, and is also having issues in joining the call. But Professor, the floor is yours for a short intervention.
Yeah. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank for the APT to invite me to join this seminar, right? And thank you for the Kun Pornpen Noi to present the activity for the prevent the torture for the first hour in the detention. I think this is the activity that can protect the torture by the community activity, right? For the activity of the APT to join with the our task to the prevention, I think Kun Narilak that said all. So for me, in my opinion, in Thailand, we have the law that protect the suspect at the first time that they have been sent to the police station. But in practice, that Noi said that we cannot prevent them from after they have been arrested, and the way to the police station, maybe they have to custody in another place. That is make them to maybe torture after arrest and go to the police station. There is the range of time. So there is a secret house of arrest there. And the other one, I think we will support the APT and the activity of the Kunoi, that how to prevent torture in the project. That first of all, I would like to say that our draft of the anti-torture and disappearance will be proposed to the Parliament maybe the next year, but I'm not sure that this law will pass in the soon. Maybe it take time. So if we try to make the public to support this law and try to make the awareness of the public to prevent torture, I think it will work in Thailand. And I think in the role of the judge now is better than 10 years, last 10 years, because now judges sentence the official that torture more than the last 10 years. And as the Kunoi said that the judges give the decision to compensation, to ask the accused to compensation to the victim in torture more than 10 years before. So I think it's better that the role of the judges respond to the anti-torture now in Thailand. I hope so. So the APT role to support us to prevent torture is maybe useful in the next decade. Thank you so much to give me the participation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for sharing your views. I've got the pleasure to say that Aina is back with us on the call, so that's good. Aina, bienvenue. There were lots of questions for you as well and the rest of the panelists. So we are doing quite well in terms of time. We'd say we have 20-25 minutes for questions now. I'm going to give the floor to my colleague Alexis Komninos, who's our legal advisor at the EPT and also been working on our project in Madagascar with Ben and Aina. He's going to read a few questions, and then Alexis is going to give the floor to Mario, to Aina and Noi. Okay, just so when we can, I would ask you to be, if possible, a bit brief in your response. So we may have the opportunity to do a second round of questions. We don't know yet. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you very much, Audrey, and thank you to all the participants and the panelists for a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you everyone for your questions as well. Very rich selection of questions, so I apologize in advance for not being able to address all of them. We will, however, circulate them with the panelists, so they will have an opportunity to provide answers afterwards. What I tried to do is group them by theme, and we had a number of questions revolving around monitoring of police custody and how also to assess the efficiency of safeguards. So, for example, we had Ricardo Nyoy from the Argentinian NPM asking, is there any type of monitoring in the first moments of detention, particularly in Brazil? But I think that this question can be extended to the other panelists. And also a question by Marie Salfati from FIACAT about monitoring by civil society, particularly in the context of Madagascar, but again, relevant to other contexts as well. Zdenka Perovic from the SPT asked us how is there any evidence recorded of how the safeguards such as the letter of rights are being used? And that question can also be completed by Kwanele Pakati's question from the South African NPM regarding how do you measure the substantive element of the safeguards? How do you know that not only are the people informed of their rights, for example, but they're informed effectively of their rights? So I think that that's already quite a lot of substance. So I leave it up to the speakers to touch on the issues that they think are most relevant. Maybe we can go in inverted order, start with our speakers from Thailand. Maybe Noino, if you have reflections on this.
Yes, okay. In terms of monitoring the custody, we use, we encourage the family of detainees or arrested person to take an active role, because civil society and our National Human Rights Commission would come into this intervention very late after arrest. No? So we encourage the family of detainees. So we train them. We have actually producing a handbook for detention monitoring for the families in easy use, but because we use the context in the Deep South, the detention that we monitor is not the police, it's the military camp. So the military camps are also operating under the martial law. So their rules always change. So we have some difficulty to encourage the family to continue the monitoring. So we ask them to visit the detainee every day and come back to the office, and we record what they see, because during these 7 days under the martial law, the lawyer cannot visit, NGO cannot visit, and also the doctor is only the doctor within the army camp. So the family are the key actor for detention monitoring in the context that we are working at. And if it's in Bangkok, so the student activists are very well informed about their own rights. So they're using social media, they even use their phone recording when they were in the police car, they even make a Facebook Live. So that is another context where the one who knowing their own rights and the friends who are closer to them at the time when the arrest happened are using social media to capture all that first few hours. And the monitoring or evaluation of the use of the material that we have, I think we are seeing them happy to receive. And the second is we doing a training, no? And also with APT, we also doing a legal clinic online with the volunteer that have received their material. So it's not only material itself, but it's also communication and dialogue with international experts. Even though we have a COVID pandemic, but we're still seeing Shazira and Andre and the other invitees from APT contacts. So we felt that we weren't having some room to discuss about the problem that the detainees family are facing, and happy to do that more often, Shazira, for the legal clinic, and also all the material that we wanted to distribute. We even have the Malayu language, English and Thai. So it's very well received, and some of them putting in the tea house, tea shop. So when the police come, when the people come, they can use them as to show that we have the rights, so they should be respected.
Great, thank you very much. Now maybe we can move over to Brazil and give the floor to Mario. I think in particular interesting to the Brazil context is the existence of a strong network of national and local preventive mechanisms in that context. So yeah, Mario, please.
Bom, aqui no Brasil,
well, here in Brazil, I think it's it's important to say that we have an operation that is very sound in partnership with the APT and the National Council of Justice to train the judges in their duty of preventing torture. In this sense, our guidelines for preventing ill treatment and torture in the custody hearing was published by the National Council of Justice in 2020, approaching the main concepts, death and torture, in a practical way. We are explaining the step-by-step, all the activities, all the procedures, all the duties that come from the absolute forbidding case of torture. So this is an instrument that has been disseminated for all the judges. These guidelines are showing how to prevent torture, and we have norms and jurisprudence on the topic, and we have also international guidelines to guide the judges in the control of the arrests, and also to start the investigations in case of evidence of violence and traces of violence. And this document is proposing reflections from the daily experience from the courts, and we face recurring dilemmas, and we are sharing practices and best practices that are being locally developed. Brazil is a very big country, so we demand solutions that can be used in a place and could be replicated in other places in Brazil. The guidelines are also providing practical orientations and implementations of rules and principles established by the Resolution 213 about custody hearing. So to summarize, we could say that today in Brazil, the judiciary is working very hard to fight torture.
Há iniciativas também no âmbito do Poder Executivo, né, que controla as polícias, mas o Judiciário tem capitaneado e levado à frente esse movimento. E como essa provavelmente vai ser minha última intervenção aqui hoje, eu não poderia deixar de falar também que o Conselho Nacional de Justiça também está atento a questões que envolvem certas minorias marginalizadas e que estão sujeitas até a situações ainda piores de tortura. Então, nesse sentido, a gente editou esse ano uma resolução que trata da questão da população LGBTI presa, né? Então, é uma população mais vulnerável ainda, está sujeita a outros tipos de violência, né, adicionais, além daqueles que a população carcerária já está, né? Se houver um tempo final, daí eu entro em mais detalhes, mas não podia deixar de dizer que o Brasil já está caminhando mais adiante aí também na defesa das minorias no que concerne a combate à tortura. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, Mario. And now, maintenant, je vais demander à Aina de nous donner son point de vue, donc en particulier sur le rôle de la société civile aussi dans le monitoring de la détention par la police et de comment évaluer l'impact de ces garanties, notamment la lettre de droit sur la protection des personnes privées de liberté. Aina.
À Madagascar, comme je l'avais annoncé tout à l'heure, nous travaillons avec beaucoup de sociétés civiles, comme l'Action chrétienne pour la prévention de la torture, ou ACAT Madagascar, qui est d'ailleurs choisi pour l'APT pour faire le suivi donc, des actions effectuées au niveau de la police judiciaire, au niveau de la prison. Mais sinon, notre législation donc permet le contrôle inopiné, que ce soit au niveau de la hiérarchie judiciaire, c'est-à-dire le parquet, au niveau des violents, des associations comme la Croix-Rouge Et maintenant, Madagascar dispose depuis 3 ans maintenant la Commission nationale indépendante de droits de l'homme, qui est composée par des commissaires aux droits de l'homme qui effectuent donc des suivis par rapport à la réalisation des droits des personnes, des droits humains, et plus particulièrement le droit lié à la lutte contre la torture. Sinon, la police nationale de Madagascar dispose de l'inspection générale de la police nationale qui est ouverte à toute doléance, que ce soit doléance directe, saisine directe ou saisine par le biais des associations. Donc, les membres de la société civile peuvent approcher directement l'inspection générale de la police nationale pour déposer des plaintes. Sinon, au niveau de la présidence de la République de Madagascar, il a été créé un service spécifique de doléances. Donc, ce service reçoit toutes les doléances et les répercute au niveau donc des entités concernées pour une ouverture d'enquête immédiate, comme il est stipulé donc par la loi sur la torture. Les policiers, vous m'entendez pas? Excusez-moi. Les policiers, au niveau des écoles de formation, donc depuis 2016, nous avons intégré donc un module spécial droits de l'homme pour les policiers et plus particulièrement la lutte contre la torture. Et à partir depuis la promotion de 2020, donc, tous les cadres de la police nationale, c'est-à-dire les futurs commissaires et officiers de police, ont déjà mis en pratique les registres et les outils développés dans le cadre donc, du projet avec l'APT pour une appropriation institutionnelle de ce projet. C'est pas parce que si un jour l'APT décide de soutenir un pays que nous, on va dire bah, ça suffit alors pour Madagascar. Mais en fait, ce que j'aimerais partager, c'est surtout s'il y a la volonté. La volonté au niveau donc de l'État, au niveau du ministère, au niveau de chaque agent. Ça, c'est très important. Et il faut vraiment concrétiser cet engagement par des actions. Par exemple, nous, pour qu'il puisse vraiment une réalisation effective de tout ça, nous avons adopté d'autres outils. Par exemple, le registre des effets personnels. C'est quoi? Pour éviter que les policiers volent les affaires des personnes en détention. Pour qu'il y ait une traçabilité, parce que c'est un droit aussi, leur droit, vraiment, c'est pas parce qu'ils sont suspects qu'ils n'ont plus le droit d'avoir leurs biens. Nous avons aussi normalisé les registres de violents. Parce qu'à Madagascar, certains services ne disposent pas de salle de sûreté. Donc, ils empruntent la salle de sûreté d'autres services. Et on a normalisé ça. Pourquoi? Pour qu'il y ait un suivi effectif, donc que telle personne a été effectivement détenue dans un tel endroit, que leurs droits par rapport au délai de garde à vue sont bien respectés. Et nous avons également une très bonne relation avec les médias, les journalistes qui n'hésitent pas à dénoncer ce que nous faisons mal, qui n'hésitent pas à nous interpeller s'il y a des cas d'abus qui ne sont pas dénoncés et qui contribuent également à informer, à éduquer et à sensibiliser les gens à dénoncer et à promouvoir également ce que nous appelons l'intégrité pour qu'il n'y ait pas de corporatisme en ce qui concerne la torture au niveau de la police nationale de Madagascar. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Aina, pour cette intervention très intéressante aussi. Je pense que malheureusement, on ne va pas avoir le temps de faire un deuxième round de questions. We won't have a time to take a second round of questions, but I think that Our speakers have touched upon a number of the questions that had been asked. Notably, we had a group of questions around training. Aina made some very interesting points on that. We also had questions about incentives and disincentives to torture. Those were also covered to some extent by our speakers. So maybe I'll just use the 30 seconds I have left on my end to also thank our STAR team of interpreters that have been doing a great job throughout the webinar, and I'll pass the floor over to Audrey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexi. So we are coming to an end to this webinar, and I'm quite impressed also about the level of participation. There were lots of questions. Again, don't worry, we have taken them all and we're going to share them with the speakers if you haven't had the specific response to your questions. So just to give it an end and wrap up, I would like to pass the floor to two persons. First, Susanna Simões Abassi from the canton of Geneva, who has actually been supporting the implementation of this project for the past 3 years. And thanks to the support, we were able to work quite flexibly with our partners also in terms of COVID-19. So thank you, Susanna, for the flexibility and the support. And finally, Barbara Bernat, our Secretary General, will give a few final remarks. So please stay a few minutes still until the end of the webinar. Susanna, the floor is yours. You can speak in whichever language you would like to.
Ok, donc je vais intervenir en français. Merci à tous pour vos contributions très intéressantes. Merci aussi pour la qualité logistique de la réunion, malgré quelques petits couacs. Je trouve que c'est une prouesse avec plus de 100 participants d'avoir eu autant d'échanges et autant d'interventions. La prévention de la torture, c'est une thématique qui tient à cœur le canton de Genève. Vous savez que Genève est le siège de nombreuses organisations et du Conseil des droits de l'homme des Nations Unies. Et c'est une question, la prévention de la torture, qui est d'autant plus d'actualité aujourd'hui vu l'impact négatif de la pandémie sur la situation. On voit que la pandémie est un prétexte à des violences policières aussi sur le terrain, à des abus dans les prisons. Et donc, le canton de Genève est très alerte par rapport à ça. L'APT, en quelques mots, c'est un partenaire de longue date du canton. C'est une association centrale de la Genève internationale. C'est une organisation expérimentée, reconnue, avec un impact sur le terrain. Et c'est aussi une organisation qui mène une réflexion. Et ça, c'est très important pour nous et pour votre travail sur le terrain. C'est une réflexion qui se reflète dans le plan stratégique 2020-2023. Et c'est une réflexion qui est issue des bilans des projets, de vos contributions sur le terrain et de recherche d'un niveau plus académique. Tout ça, c'est les forces de l'APT, mais la plus grande force, je pense que c'est l'intelligence opérationnelle. C'est vous tous, intervenants, ce fort ancrage sur le terrain des partenaires variés et divers, publics, organisations privées, sociétés civiles, pour ne citer que cela. C'est aussi des pays d'intervention qui sont choisis parce que des changements peuvent être réalisés sur un délai raisonnable, on va dire. Donc, c'est un impact qui est déjà mesurable. C'est aussi des méthodologies qui sont adaptées à chaque terrain. On l'a vu notamment avec une approche très créative en Thaïlande. Je retiens plusieurs termes qui ont été cités par les intervenants. Humaniser les pratiques, transmettre du savoir-faire, mettre en confiance les acteurs locaux, revenir sur le droit chemin, outiller la société civile, susciter sa réaction, réduire la corruption, autant d'effets directs et indirects de vos actions. Et vraiment, c'est essentiel parce que, on le sait, en matière de droits humains, l'évaluation de l'impact est difficile. Et là, quand on vous entend, l'impact, on le sent, il est là, il est réel. Et pour ça, vraiment, au nom du canton de Genève, je tiens à vous féliciter tous pour votre engagement, votre courage aussi. On sait qu'il faut du courage sur certains contextes pour avancer dans ce domaine. Ce que j'entends aussi, c'est que la pérennisation des activités de l'APT sur le terrain, ça reste un défi. On a parlé de volonté politique. Là aussi, je perçois des pistes. J'entends la volonté de décentraliser l'expertise et la représentation de l'APT dans les pays où l'organisation est présente. J'entends aussi la volonté de numériser, de favoriser les échanges entre pairs, d'articuler le local et l'international. Et je pense que cette dynamique, elle est vraiment centrale et c'est une force pour la consolidation des actions sur le terrain, mais aussi, et c'est indispensable pour la recherche d'appui externe, qu'il soit opérationnel ou financier. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Susanna, pour ces belles paroles. I'm going to give the floor now to Barbara if you want to give a few final remarks for our partners, and we'll also, after the intervention from Barbara, we will put an end to the webinar. So thank you for everyone and to all the speakers and for your patience with the logistics and the different elements.
Thank you very much, Audrey. As you say, this is now the end of this webinar on the first hours of detention and the lessons learned from a 3 years journey in Madagascar, Thailand, and Brazil. And we have seen how the context in the 3 countries is very different. And it was very, very interesting to hear the different perspectives, but also the opportunities, the results, and sometimes the remaining challenges. I think for us, this project was also a new project, as we said, focusing on the first hours of detention with supporting national partners in improving the implementation of these safeguards. Was also a journey and a lessons from us. I think the journey is not over, and we have seen and we have heard that there is still much to do, but there is progress and there are results. And I think these results are due to a combination of different elements. And I think some of them, most of them, if not all, were mentioned. First, the focus on prevention, which means dialogue with all the different stakeholders in these first hours of detention. The focus on the areas of risks, and the addressing these risks, the partnership, and we have seen, I think this webinar is also an illustration of the great partnership that has been developed over these 3 years, but also partnership with different types of partners in the countries, and as we see today, across the countries as well. And finally, last but not least, the creativity and the reflection to always find new ways to address the challenges and find new solutions. So I don't want to be too long at this late stage, as we know it's quite late in Thailand. Basically, I would like to make one announcement and then thank you to several persons. First, and to continue with this idea of creativity, I would like to announce that we are about to launch an online gallery with a series of photographies from the 3 countries, photographies from the partners and photography from the projects that are serve as illustration of this journey. We will inform you, and you will receive an email with the link, and it's a beautiful gallery. You will see where you can virtually visit and look at the pictures. I would also like to say a series of thank you to, first, of course, to our partners who have made this project happen on a reality, and also now who have participated with as speaker. And of course, first Noi Noi, as we call her, but her name is Ponkern Konkachonket, and Aina Randria Belo in Madagascar, and Mario Guerreiro in Brazil, but also the 2 other partners who participated here from Thailand, Professor Narong and Nariluk Parchayapun. As I said, are also partners in this project and made it a success. I also would like to express my thanks, of course, to Susanna Simoes and through her to the Canton of Geneva to the support, but also for the nice words now regarding APT. I think
as we said, a journey requires also support through the time and flexibility and adaptation. And I think we had that also from the donor. I would also like to thank my colleagues and especially the senior advisors who have been involved during the 3 years in these 3 countries, who have done a great job in implementing the project through the years and develop this partnership. Of course, Shazira Zawawi for Thailand and together with Andra Nicolescu. Ben Buckland for the project in Madagascar and Sylvia Diaz in Brazil. And also for conducting the interview and making really a dialogue in this discussion today. Also like to thank Alexis Komnenos who summarized some of the questions, and Audrey Olivier for great moderation of the whole challenging 2 hours webinar with more than 100 participants on 4 languages. I also take this opportunity to thank the interpreters. Don't have time to name them all because we have many, but without interpretation, it's difficult to have a dialogue across countries. I'm sorry for not having Thai language, but maybe, maybe next time. But thank you to all the interpreters into Portuguese, French, as well as Spanish. And last but not least, I would like to thank you, the participants, for having taken your time and for your interest in this discussion, as well as for all the questions. I think there was really a kind of interaction on the Q&A session. I'm sorry that we were not able to answer all the questions, but as Audrey said, we will follow up with the speakers because some questions were very specific, some were very general, but we will follow up and make sure that there are answers provided. So with that, I think we will just stop on time. And I just say again, thank you, Kapunka, obrigada, merci beaucoup, merci à tous. Bonne fin de journée et bonne soirée. Thank you. Thank you, goodbye.